Hi, welcome to Crafted Sweetly. I'm Diana. Thanks so much for being here. Another photo book art design and idea to add to your stash of ideas as far as creating something different than just your traditional art where you're just applying the image to the edge of it. So I've printed out the pattern. I'm using photobookart.com to create my patterns. This is an Inksaver version. If you're new to folding the strip art, Inksaver doesn't mean that you get less of a quality as far as the design. It just means that the image is printed right down the middle of the strip. And I have my image printed right here. It's 400 pages for the book. And I know sometimes new people are concerned that, everything looks blurry and I can't tell what it is. That's how the pattern is. It is stretched out over 400 pages, so that's why things look blurry. But I am using, as usual, my Cutterpillar to cut the strips. And I won't spend too much time in terms of applying the strips, just because I've done so many videos and you can watch those for how to apply the strips and tips and tricks and things like that. So be sure to check out my channel, subscribe to it. It's Crafted Sweetly. If you're watching this, obviously you're on my channel. But I am using the Cutterpillar crop to cut this. I love this cutter paper trimmer because it has a light. And this blade is pretty much invincible. So you can cut chipboard with it and it works fine. So I cut off the top, I cut off all the sides. You do want to make sure you keep the strips in order. If you're new to this, you may want to label the strips right on the side here, which is not visible. So you can mark 1, 3, 5, the page numbers right on the side if you need to do that. But if you keep them in order, you should be good. So I am trimming off the top here. Whoops. And again, the light really, really helps because I know exactly where the blade is going to cut. This is a perfect example of a page that's easy to scramble because everything kind of looks the same. So that's definitely something you want to be mindful of. And, if you're paranoid, you can mark the strips, as I mentioned, like right on the edge here. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. And I'm just doing it for this page. Don't plan on doing it for the rest of it, but that's what you would do. And then I would trim off the bottom as well. So I'm gonna cut this off real quick here, or slice them into strips. I have sliced first page of my pattern. So I'm going to set this aside for a second and move my Cutterpillar out of the way and then bring my book folding stand up. So I do have this in my Etsy shop if you're looking for a book stand. Now the other thing that I want to do with this book is I'm going to mark this top here, and you'll see why, as I continue working on this project. But I am marking kind of an oval out of this. So I just found this core washi tape that I'm gonna use to score this. You can use whatever you have that's is gonna fit between these covers as far as marking the top of the page. A coin, whatever it is. If you want to use a compass, you can. So I'm just gonna set this down here. I'm holding it tight, and I'm just gonna use a marker. I'm gonna go to this side so I can hold this down with pressure, and I'm marking. Now I'll show you what I mean. I got some of the marker like off, not quite where the edge of this is, but it won't matter even if you scribble here, because that will eventually get covered. So I'm not too concerned about that. And then I'm going to cut mark the same thing over here. I don't want to go too close to the edge, and you'll see why once I start doing this project, but roughly about here. So if I take a ruler, let's see if I want to change that actually. So that's about 3 inches right there. You know what? So we'll change it a little bit. I'm gonna go a little farther into the book because I want about a 3-inch diameter here. So let me do that again right here. I'm holding this super tight. And then I'll just go back and mark it. And again, if you're kind of out of line with it, it doesn't matter. So that I don't want, just so I don't get confused. And then my 3 inches will be right here. So that's about what I want, roughly right there. I think that'll give me 3 inches. Let me measure it one more time. Yeah, right, a little more than 3 inches I think is right there. So holding tight, marking this as well. And what I'll even do, again, this is not going to be visible in the end. So whatever you need to do to be able to make it visible, that's what you want to do. I'm taking, I guess this is a dry erase board marker. I just want it to be thick and visible. Okay, so that's my marking on the top of the book. Okay, now back to the side here. And I have my strips, which are perfect for this book. Okay, and what I do with my strips is I just use my fingers to fold them. But if you want to, if you're not comfortable doing that and you need to score them beforehand, you can certainly do that. A Cutterpillar crease is an excellent scoreboard, and I have a tutorial on how to use that Cutterpillar crease to make sure that you get a perfect score line right down the middle. So if you need to do that, you can. Now that's strip 1. I'll do 3 strips here. Usually I do more than one at a time as far as folding them. Lately I've been cutting the entire pattern into strips and then going back and folding them as I apply them. So this I'll set aside, and now I'm going to apply my strip here. Okay, so I'm gonna apply the strip here, and then the strip goes on as usual. Right there, press, make sure it's against the page. Now what I want to do is I'm going to use the 2 markings that I have there, and I'm using my my slider guide here, and I'm going to, I see the markings right there, right here. If you can, I see it from the side, so you wouldn't be able to see the side at the same time on the camera, but I'm putting the slider guide here, and then I'm marking this all the way back to the depth of here. And I can use my pencil, doesn't matter, because I'm gonna cut that back all the way to where that ends. Okay, so at this point I'm going to take scissors and cut this back right on the line. I kind of veered off right at the end there. Now if you're not perfect on this, it doesn't really matter as much, and then this gets folded back right there. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do with every single page in the book. We're just gonna follow this here. So we're basically creating a crater on the side, on the top of the book. strip. Make sure this is even, press it down, and then there. And then same thing again, I'm gonna use the 2 markings. It helps if you do the top with a Sharpie kind of thing that's gonna bleed a little bit. That way you know exactly where you need to move this slider guide to. Now if you don't have the slider guide, you can still do this, no problem at all. You can take a ruler, and then at this point, you know, if you're slightly off, it doesn't matter as much. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty forgiving part of the project. This part you want to make sure you're nice and even with as usual on the front. But as far as this top, if you're slightly off, you know, or crooked, it doesn't matter as much. I know OCD may kick in for some of us if this is not straight. I know sometimes, you know, it bugs me, but I've kind of learned to not obsess over it if it's not perfect, especially places where it's not visible. So okay, so that's in. Now as I go farther into the book, so let me kind of pull this out here for a second so I show you what I mean. So I'm creating this crater. Now as I go farther, as I get to like halfway into the book, this is gonna be farther out here, so this is gonna be a wider opening. That's why I didn't want it like this is how much space you have here. Had I gone with this whole like all the way here, then this wouldn't have enough stability. So that's why I'm trying to keep the edge here. How much is that? About 1.25 inches in from the edge of the book. Okay, so that's what I'm going to continue doing with the pages here. Let's see, I'm going to do probably like half the book, and then when I get to like the widest point, and then I'll show you again where I'm at and how it looks. But every page is going to have a fold in for the top part. Okay, so I will continue with this, and then like I said, check back in and show you the progress to that point. Okay, thought I would check in so you can see my progress so far. And on top, as you can see, I have been folding the pages back, and the distance that I'm folding it back is what my slider guide goes back to. So I'm just following this line up here. Again, if it's not exact, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to be able to see most of this after I'm done with the design. You'll see what I'm going to do with it, but loving how this is looking so far. So I have a link in my description box for the type of paper that I use, the printer that I use, you know, in case you're looking for. I know sometimes people that are new to this 4-edge photo book art, they're wondering what kind of paper to use and what kind of printer. So I do have links in my description box for all that. But this is what it kind of looks like on as a side, you know, like in the middle view for it. So I will continue with the design and then continue carving this out, and then you'll see what I'm gonna do with it. I want to record a few more pages just in case you haven't. Okay, there we go. I think it's a newer tape there, so it hadn't started. So I have my strips already cut out, and just applying the strips here. So I'll apply like 3 of them. And I'm not putting it underneath the arm because I'm going to mark them in a second, so I didn't want to keep going back and forth. So when it's usually like that, I just hold it with my finger out of the way so that I can work on a few more pages. Okay, put that in. So I've got 3 pages. I just press them nicely, make sure they're even. And then I'm going to mark these. Now, it's a little hard to see. Let me tip this over. You can see my markings right there. It's hard to see on camera, but I can see the faint mark like right there and right there. So I will take my slider guide here and the straight edge. This is against my raised edge here. And again, if you don't have this, you can use a ruler. So I'm just gonna set this down and then mark this here and go down to the other one, which is right there. It looks pretty deep, and there's a reason I want it as deep, and you'll see why in a minute. But then here's the front. Super cool. Let me zoom out a little bit more so you can see it a little better. Okay, so that's there, and then the design up here. So I'm just kind of following the line. Again, not perfect, totally fine. So you don't need to stress about it if it's slightly off. That's all gonna end up getting covered. Okay, but I really love this design. So I'll finish this book up as far as the strips, and then I'll show you what I'm gonna do with the top. I am now all finished with the book, and what I did was I tied a ribbon around here because I wanted it at this particular opening. As I mentioned, this is going to have, I wasn't so concerned if these are not perfect because there's going to be a strip here, basically like this, that's going to hold it in place. And then I'm adding one more just for stability back here. Probably don't need to, but I'm just adding it just to kind of have it in place, and this will not move. So I do have a ribbon around here. But I want to show you, you can see the ribbon right there, and that's going to come off. But I want to show you what the book looks like if you were just to do the design as is. So you don't necessarily need to do this if you don't choose to, or if you don't want to. If you don't want to turn this into a planter, which is what this is becoming, then you can just use the pattern, and I'll list it like this in the in my Etsy shop. So if you want to recreate this, I'll have this pattern there. But this does not have a pattern. You're just basically cutting out an opening here. So I have some glue here, and I'm gonna add the glue and tape that down. I'm using art glitter glue. Whoops, probably don't need quite that much, but let's see. I'm just gonna use a brush and glue this down, and then I'll glue the other part down. Okay, same thing. If this is not perfectly cut, you have a little bit of extra space, no worries, you will not see this. Now, if you're doing this and not turning this into a planter, then what I would recommend is that you do this stabilizing at the bottom. And I do have a video on how to stabilize your books so that they don't shift anymore. So this has completely dried now. It's like one solid block, and that's the same right there. Everything all nice and even. So now for the fun, exciting part, what I have is a live plant. So you can see right there, there's soil. Everything's, you know, I watered it, let it dry. I do have holes on the bottom, so obviously you wouldn't want to water the plant while it's in the display piece. I took this out, watered the plant, let it dry to make sure that nothing's, I mean, you could put, I guess, a plastic tray underneath there or something, but once this is no longer leaking and it had a little bit of time to dry out, then this goes right up here. And it fits perfectly in that little spot right there. So now I can't really tilt the book to show you what it looks like, so I need to kind of flip from filming things from above to showing you from the side. So I'm gonna take my project outside and kind of do a separate video from there. So now to show you what the pattern looks like from the front with the nice planter idea on the top. So you can see the plant right up here. Everything's there. Now, next one I would probably do where the image would be cut here and you don't really see any of this. But otherwise, I mean, even as it is, I think it's beautiful. Could be in lieu of a hat, I suppose. Some nice decorative hat, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. If you end up doing this kind of project, would love to see it, see what you come up with. If you have any questions, comment below. Would definitely love to see your project with this design idea. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next project.